I came here in good spirit. I love the black population of this country.
Just minutes before he passed away, Pope John Paul II left behind his last words about Donald Trump, shocking the world. This unexpected event left people all over the world stunned, and they began to ask many questions about the future ahead. What made him feel obligated to discuss Trump? Was it a prophecy come true? Was it a sign from God? Or possibly a warning about things to come? In this episode, we will explain more information. Before we get started, please like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more content. Also, check out the next video on your screen. You might like it. Trump's message from Pope John Paul II. Within the hallowed, serene atmosphere of the Vatican, Pope John Paul II approached his final moments. As he uttered his last words, he surprisingly referenced Donald Trump. On April 2, 2005, Pope John Paul II, the third longest-serving pontiff in history, passed away at the age of 84. At that time, Trump was widely recognized as a flamboyant businessman and reality TV personality, far from the political figure he would later become. Nonetheless, the Pope's reflections included hints about Trump's future importance. However, this was not the only focus of his final thoughts. He also delved into the gospel, particularly the story of the risen Christ and doubting Thomas, which underpinned his concluding teachings. Amidst these reflections, his unexpected mention of Donald Trump has sparked much intrigue and speculation. Why did he speak of Trump, a figure seemingly unrelated to his immediate spiritual concerns? Stay tuned, as the biggest revelation of this video is yet to come. Pope John Paul II's comments about Trump were enigmatic, but undeniably significant. He mentioned Trump in the context of future global events, suggesting that Trump would ascend to a position of great influence and play a crucial role in shaping the world's future. These posthumous revelations have stirred considerable intrigue and debate. Why did a spiritual leader devoted to divine mercy and faith feel compelled to speak about someone like Trump? What did he see in Trump that demanded such attention? These questions lie at the heart of our exploration into the Pope's prophetic insights. To understand the Pope's remarks about Trump, we must explore the nature of prophecy and the role of spiritual leaders in interpreting divine messages. Pope John Paul II was renowned for his profound spirituality and his ability to discern and express God's will. His reflections on Trump, therefore, should be considered through the perspective of spiritual insight and prophetic vision. In Catholic tradition, prophecy often involves foreseeing events that align with divine plans and warnings. The Pope's comments about Trump can be interpreted as a prophetic vision, a glimpse into the future granted by divine inspiration. This vision was not merely about Trump as an individual, but also about the broader implications of his rise to power. The Pope's reflections suggested that Trump's influence would be extensive, affecting not only political realms but also moral and spiritual dimensions. He alluded to a period of significant change where Trump's actions would instigate both positive and negative developments. This duality is a common theme in prophetic messages, highlighting the complexity of human free will and divine providence. In the years following Pope John Paul II's death, Donald Trump's rise has been nothing short of extraordinary. For many, Trump's actions and rhetoric have had profound effects on both the United States and the world. Analyzing Trump's role in contemporary events necessitates a balanced approach, recognizing both his accomplishments and controversies. Supporters commend his efforts to enhance national security, stimulate economic growth, and challenge established political systems. Critics, however, highlight divisive policies, inflammatory rhetoric, and ethical concerns. From a prophetic standpoint, Trump's presidency can be seen as a realization of Pope John Paul II's vision. His tenure has indeed brought about significant changes and sparked global debates on numerous issues. Day after day, for the third time, a request to delay was turned down. The case revolves around hush money given to a porn star and the subsequent efforts by the former president to conceal it. Regardless of one's perspective, Trump's influence seems to align with the Pope's prediction of a key figure shaping global events. Trump's presidency has undeniably impacted American politics and society, with effects that extend to the international stage. His time in office has prompted both supporters and critics to confront challenging questions about morality and politics. From a prophetic standpoint, These debates underscore the complex nature of Trump's impact, reflecting on the values and principles that shape political and social life. Understanding this reflection is crucial for grasping the broader significance of his role in modern history. Trump's interactions with religious communities have been a notable aspect of his presidency. He gained substantial support from evangelical Christians and other religious groups who felt his policies were in line with their values. His administration's positions on issues like religious freedom resonated deeply with these groups. Pope John Paul II's final message was characterized by a profound connection to faith and a strong sense of justice, which guided his later focus on mercy, love, and vigilance. This foundation provides a framework for assessing the impact of figures like Donald Trump through a spiritual perspective, encouraging believers to remain grounded in their principles amidst political upheaval. Before Pope John Paul II became the next pope, his journey began with humble origins. Pope John Paul II's formative years. Pope John Paul II was born Karol Wojtyla, but his journey to prominence would only come later. His early life was marked by significant hardships. He lost his only sister, Olga, in infancy. His mother died when he was 9, and his older brother Edmund passed away when he was 12. Despite these tragedies, Karol enjoyed a lively childhood, taking pleasure in sports like skiing, swimming, and football. He played as a goalkeeper and supported Polish club Kawia and Spanish club FC Barcelona. During school football matches between Jewish and Catholic teams, which sometimes became tense due to anti-Jewish sentiments, Karol willingly stepped in as a substitute goalkeeper for the Jewish team when needed. Around this time, he also had a notable relationship with a girl named Gab, described as a Jewish beauty with striking features and talent. Karol became president of the Society of Mary and, at 15, faced a perilous situation that nearly cost him his life. He would experience other close calls as he grew up, and later as pope. In 1938, he began studying at Krakow's Jagiellonian University, where he developed a passion for theater and poetry. He studied philosophy, Polish language and literature, introductory Russian, and Old Church Slavonic, and took private French lessons. As a volunteer librarian, he diligently performed his duties and participated in compulsory military training with the Academic Legion, though he refrained from handling weapons. By the end of the 1938 and 1939 academic years, he performed in the role of Sagarius in the experimental theater troupe's production of The Moonlight Cavalier. The university was closed the following year due to Nazi occupation. Hitler arrived to inspect the devastation in Poland, which was then split between the Nazi Germans and the Soviets. During the first year of the war, Karol worked as a messenger for a restaurant, a job that allowed him to continue his education, participate in theatrical productions, and engage in cultural resistance. He also dedicated more time to studying French. In the fall of 1940, Karol took on manual labor in a limestone quarry, working there for nearly 4 years and earning a decent wage. His father passed away from a heart attack in 1941. After mourning his father's death, Karol joined an underground seminary run by Cardinal Sapieha, the Archbishop of Krakow, in 1942. Reports from Bnei B'rith and other sources indicate that he also assisted Jews in evading the Nazis. On February 29, 1944, Karol was struck by a German truck while walking home from the quarry. The German officers who came to his aid used a passing truck as an ambulance. Karol spent 2 weeks in the hospital recovering from a severe concussion, multiple cuts, and a shoulder injury. This incident reinforced his conviction about his calling to the priesthood. He resumed his studies in a secret seminary operated by the Archbishop of Krakow and, following the end of World War II, completed his religious education at the Krakow Seminary, being ordained in 1946. John Paul II spent 2 years in Rome earning his doctorate in theology. Upon returning to Poland in 1948, he served in several parishes around Krakow. By 1958, he was appointed Bishop of Omby and 6 years later became Archbishop of Krakow. Renowned for his influential role within the Catholic Church, he played a key part in the Second Vatican Council, which began in 1962 and lasted several years. The council reviewed church teachings and the church's role in the modern world. During the council, the Pope did not condemn any heresies, and by 1986, he was seen worshiping with those considered heretical or unorthodox. John Paul II's significant contributions led to his appointment as a cardinal by Pope Paul VI in 1967. Following Pope Paul VI's death in August 1978, the College of Cardinals was split between two prominent Italian candidates. Albino Luciani was elected Pope John Paul I, but he passed away just 33 days later. During the 1978 conclave, Wojtyla was a candidate who had garnered votes early on. He was seen as a unifying figure who could bridge the divisions caused by the Second Vatican Council. Although the Council's liberal reforms had sparked controversy, Wojtyla was considered both traditional in church discipline and receptive to the Council's reforms. The cardinals hoped his relative youth would attract younger followers to the church. When Wojtyla was elected pope on October 16, 1978, he became the first non-Italian pope since Adrian VI from the Netherlands, who reigned from 1522 to 1523. By choosing the name John Paul II, he honored his predecessor, John Paul I, and reaffirmed his commitment to the reforms of the Second Vatican Council. At his installation mass on October 22, 1978, John Paul II highlighted the biblical phrase, "Be not afraid," a call that symbolizes God's presence and encourages Christian courage. This theme foreshadowed his global human rights campaigns. As Pope, he traveled to over 100 countries to promote faith and peace. However, his papacy faced a grave threat on May 13, 1981, when Mehmet Ali Akka attempted to assassinate him in St. Peter's Square. Despite being hit by all 4 bullets fired at close range, John Paul II survived the attack, attributing his survival to Our Lady of Fatima. The shooting prompted the Vatican to enhance the Pope's security, including installing bulletproof glass around him. As a gesture of thanks, John Paul II gave a bullet from the attack to the Fatima Shrine, where it was placed in the crown of the statue of Mary. In his final days, John Paul II's health declined rapidly due to a series of ailments. On March 30, 2005, he developed a urinary tract infection, UTI, that worsened his fragile condition. He had been battling Parkinson's disease, a progressive neurological disorder, since the early 1990s, which led to significant movement difficulties and other complications. Over time, difficulties with balance and coordination, along with challenges in speech and swallowing, made it increasingly hard for Pope John Paul II to carry out his duties and communicate effectively. In addition to Parkinson's disease, he suffered from severe arthritis, which caused significant pain and restricted his mobility. This arthritis, especially in his knees and hips, made walking and standing for long periods difficult. As a result, he often needed assistance and relied on a cane or wheelchair for support. Furthermore, the long-term effects of an assassination attempt on May 13, 1981, had a lasting impact on his health. Despite undergoing multiple surgeries and extensive rehabilitation, his overall health remained compromised. A urinary tract infection, UTI, triggered a series of medical crises, including septic shock, which caused a dangerously low drop in his blood pressure and led to multi-organ failure. Even with intensive medical care, antibiotics, and other treatments, his condition continued to worsen. His weakened immune system and frail physical state made it challenging to combat the infection. Despite these severe health challenges, Pope John Paul II continued to astonish the world with his unwavering commitment to his papal duties. As his death approached, he chose to spend his remaining time in deep prayer and contemplation, focusing not on himself, but on the world he loved deeply. His messages, filled with divine insight, were only fully understood after his passing, leaving behind a profound legacy. In his final days at the Vatican, surrounded by a small circle of close aides and confidants, he carefully composed messages for the world, offering spiritual guidance and reflections on humanity. These messages, kept private until after his death, revealed his deep concern for the future and the moral challenges ahead. He emphasized divine mercy, drawing from the message revealed to Saint Faustina Kowalska, a Polish nun, which he had championed throughout his papacy. This message called for trust in God's infinite mercy and a commitment to forgiveness and renewal. He also highlighted the importance of spiritual vigilance, cautioning against the growing influence of materialism and the erosion of spiritual values in modern society. He urged people to return to prayer, seek God's guidance, and act with compassion and justice. In one reflection, he anticipated a time of great spiritual struggle for the Church and its followers, calling on them to stand firm against the forces of evil. His words served as both a warning and a beacon of hope, encouraging believers to remain steadfast in their faith. Central to his final messages was the theme of mercy. In a world increasingly torn by division and conflict, he saw God's mercy as more crucial than ever. He urged everyone to embrace mercy, forgive others, and seek reconciliation as the path to true peace and unity. His reflections on the gospel reading of the risen Christ showing his wounds to the apostles were particularly moving. This event, occurring 8 days after the resurrection, saw Jesus appear to the disciples in a locked room filled with fear. Thomas, who had not been present at Jesus' initial appearance, expressed doubt and declared he would not believe until he could see and touch Christ's wounds. When Jesus reappeared and invited Thomas to touch his wounds, Thomas's doubt turned into profound faith as he exclaimed, "My Lord and my God." Pope John Paul II drew parallels between Thomas's skepticism and the modern world's doubt in faith. By inviting Thomas to touch his wounds, Christ demonstrated the depth of God's love and mercy, an essential message John Paul II felt needed to be shared with the world. He viewed this encounter as a powerful example of divine mercy and a call to faith for all believers. The wounds of Christ were not just physical, but symbols of immense love and sacrifice for humanity. By inviting Thomas to touch them, Jesus offered a tangible experience of divine mercy, transforming doubt into faith. The Pope often highlighted that faith is not always about seeing, but about believing and trusting in the unseen. Where are we now in Bible prophecy? An often voiced concern of students of the Bible is the timing of the end of this world and the return of Jesus Christ. Since the Bible is God's communication to mankind, we must go there to find out about the events to unfold in the end times. In fact, a large portion of the Bible contains prophecy. So where are we now in the timeline or progression of prophetic events? What we can and can't know about end-time prophecy. First, we can, and should, have a good general idea of where we are in the order of prophesied events. Jesus himself said, "Now learn this parable from the fig tree. When its branch has already become tender and puts forth leaves, you know that summer is near. So you also, when you see all these things, know that it is near, at the doors. Assuredly, I say to you, this generation will by no means pass away till all these things take place." Matthew 24:32-34. See also Mark 13:28-31. In other words, when we see the prophecies Jesus had just described in what is called the Olivet prophecy coming to pass, we can know the end is truly near. At the same time, Jesus made it clear we cannot pinpoint the exact timing of the end of the world and his return. But of that day and hour no one knows, not even the angels in heaven, nor the Son, but only the Father. Mark 13:32, emphasis added throughout. He said that in reply to a question the disciples had asked, "What will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age?" Matthew 24:3. Jesus had listed a number of events to unfold in the end times. Then in verse 21 he said, "For then there will be great tribulation, such as has not been since the beginning of the world." This great tribulation is a major prophetic event and is mentioned in many other prophecies throughout the Bible. This great tribulation is a major prophetic event and is mentioned in many other prophecies throughout the Bible. In brief, these prophecies show that this tribulation will last 312 years and culminate with the return of Jesus Christ. Some specific events prophesied to occur during the Great Tribulation have not yet been fulfilled. So, in other words, we are not yet in the final 312 years of this age. What must happen before the Great Tribulation? Our question then is, how near are we to the start of that Great Tribulation? To answer, we can look at a number of specific prophecies and dynamics that will be in place in the time of the end. Specifically, the time of the end is a time when the following prophesied circumstances will be in place. As you read the list below, consider that these dynamics were not apparent in even the first half of the 20th century. But together, they give the picture of a world on the brink of the Great Tribulation. Relatively speaking, there seem to be only a few details yet to materialize before all factors are in place for the final 312 years of this world to commence. Many shall run to and fro. Daniel 12:4. This prophetic trend comes to mind any time we're on a busy highway or flying out of a busy airport. Around the world, there are now over 1 billion cars, and millions of passengers fly rapidly through the skies every day. Knowledge shall increase. Daniel 12:4. According to sources cited by Boston Commons High-Tech Network, up to around the year 1900, human knowledge doubled about every century. By the end of World War II, knowledge was doubling every 25 years. Now our information base is doubling every 12 months, on the way to doubling about every 12 hours. The capability exists for humanity to destroy all life. And unless those days were shortened, no flesh would be saved. Matthew 24:22. The capacity for humans to destroy all life on the planet did not exist until after 1945, with the advent of the atomic era. Since then, the proliferation of nuclear weapons has made the destruction of all life possible, multiple times over. Increase in famines, disease epidemics, and earthquakes. And there will be famines, pestilences, and earthquakes in various places. Matthew 24:7. There have been food shortages, pandemics, and earthquakes at times throughout human history. But Christ's specific mention of them in the context of end-time events shows that they will become a much more notable, frequent phenomenon. Ability to view an event around the world. Revelation 11:3-11 reveals that shortly before Christ returns, his two witnesses, who will testify to the world from Jerusalem for 42 months, 312 years, will be killed. Then, those from the peoples, tribes, tongues, and nations will see their dead bodies 3.5 days. Verse 9. For people all around the world to view this, the technology will need to already exist. Not only is this now possible, most of us now see images from other nations daily via satellites. An army of 200 million can be fielded. Revelation 9:13-19 describes another event near the end of the 312 years, during the sixth trumpet. Verse 16 shows that an enormous army will be fielded at that time. The number of cavalry troops was 200,000. I heard how many there were. International Standard Version. Furthermore, this comes after staggering numbers of humans have already died, as revealed in chapters 6-9. The ability to field such an exceptionally large army was not possible until recent times, when the populations of some nations, such as China and India for example, or groups of nations grew so dramatically. Sacrifices at Jerusalem to begin. Daniel 12 points specifically to events at the end of this age, verses 4-9. Verse 1 calls it the worst time of trouble in human history, which coincides with Christ's words in Matthew 24:21. How long until all these things are finished? Daniel 12:7 answers, for a time, times, and half a time. This expression, also mentioned in other prophecies, equates with the final 312 years, or 1,160 days, before Christ returns. Verse 11 gives even more details. And from the time that the daily sacrifice is taken away, and the abomination of desolation is set up, there shall be 1,190 days. In order for sacrifices to be taken away just before the final 312 years, they will first need to be started again. While there are a few Jews, a small minority at present, who are advocating and preparing for a restoration of the sacrificial system in Jerusalem. As of this writing, their efforts have not been successful. This proposal to begin animal sacrifices, once again, seems quite radical to the majority of Jews, and there are political concerns about instituting this type of activity. Although sacrifices could begin again with or without majority approval, it is difficult to conceive how they could be reinstituted under current conditions. Time will tell how and when animal sacrifices will resume, and this prophecy regarding their being taken away will be fulfilled. Jerusalem surrounded by armies. But when you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies, then know that its desolation is near. Luke 21:20. Verse 24 adds that Jerusalem will then come under Gentile, non-Israelite, control. Matthew's account adds the detail that the abomination of desolation, connected with the ending of sacrifices, will be part of this takeover of Jerusalem. Matthew 24:15. In Zechariah 12:3, which also refers to Jerusalem in the end times, God says, "And it shall happen in that day that I will make Jerusalem a very heavy stone for all peoples. All who would heave it away will surely be cut in pieces, though all nations of the earth are gathered against it." If there's any city on earth that's in the news almost daily, as a focus of conflict, division, bloodshed, and controversy, it's Jerusalem. It is easy to see how military activity could quickly begin and escalate there at any time. Final revival of the Roman Empire. Students of Bible prophecy know that God foretold the rise and fall of 4 great world empires. The fourth was the Roman Empire, and the Bible shows that it would have 10 revivals, depicted by 10 horns on the fourth beast in Daniel 7:7-23-24. The 9th revival has come and gone, starting with the reunification of Italy by Garibaldi in 1870, and ending with the defeat of the World War II Axis powers of Nazi Germany and Fascist Italy, led by Hitler and Mussolini, in 1945. Following World War I, Mussolini decided his destiny was to rule Italy as a modern Caesar and recreate the Roman Empire. History.com, Benito Mussolini. The last revival of the Roman Empire, which has always been European-based, will be a union of 10 kings, or kingdoms or states, who agree to come under the authority of the beast spoken of in Revelation 17. Mussolini concluded the decade of the 1920s on a high note. His concordat with the Vatican in 1929 settled the historic differences between the Italian state and the Roman Catholic Church. Awed by a generosity that multiplied his annual income fourfold, Pope Pius V confirmed to the world that Mussolini had been sent by divine providence. As the 1930s opened, Mussolini, seated safely in power and enjoying wide support from the middle classes, undertook to shape his regime and fix its image. Italy, he announced, had commenced the epic of the Third Rome. Encyclopedia.com, Benito Mussolini. The last revival of the Roman Empire, which has always been European-based, will be a union of 10 kings, or kingdoms or states, who agree to come under the authority of the beast spoken of in Revelation 17. And the 10 horns which you saw in verse 3, a different beast than the one depicted in Daniel 7, are 10 kings who have received no kingdom as yet, but they receive authority for 1 hour as kings with beast. These are of one mind, and they will give their power and authority to the beast. Verses 12-13. These 10 kings will cooperate, but they don't mix well. This reality is pictured by the 10 toes of the image in Daniel 2:42-44. This passage refers to these toes as kings, and places them in the time frame at the end of this age, when God will set up his kingdom on earth. Today we see dynamics in Europe that will make unification and the rise of a strong leader attractive, for economic, military, cultural, and other reasons. In fact, dialogue toward this goal is increasing daily. What are we to do? Besides the short list above, there are additional prophetic indicators showing that we are near the very end of this present age. Time is short, but most people pay no attention to the Bible and believe their lives will continue securely for many years. And the Great Tribulation, which Christ said will be the worst time of trouble in man's history, will catch them completely off guard. For as in the days before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, until the day that Noah entered the ark, and did not know until the flood came and took them all away, so also will the coming of the Son of Man be. Matthew 24:38-39. Therefore, what does Jesus Christ tell us, his disciples, to do? But take heed to yourselves, lest your hearts be weighed down with carousing, drunkenness, and cares of this life, and that day come on you unexpectedly. For it will come as a snare on all those who dwell on the face of the whole earth. Watch therefore, and pray always that you may be counted worthy to escape all these things that will come to pass, and to stand before the Son of Man. Luke 21:34-36. Does Bible prophecy require a third temple to be built? In 2018, they were given permission to perform a reenactment of the Passover sacrifice at the foot of the Temple Mount. This week, the Temple Institute overcame a major hurdle in their plans to build a third temple. It was something most people would not expect. Cows. Why were red heifers sent to Jerusalem? The Temple Institute made the news when 5 red heifers were flown to Israel from Texas to meet the requirements for resuming temple sacrifices. These 5 unblemished red heifers, a heifer is a young female cow that is not yet calved, were supplied by a Christian group in Texas. The requirement comes from Numbers 19:2-10, where God commanded a sacrifice of this special heifer, whose ashes would be used for the water of purification, necessary to purify the priests before they could offer sacrifices. In times past, obtaining an unblemished red heifer was difficult, As a cow ages, hairs may turn white or black, causing the animal to be rejected by the rabbis as blemished. Here's the irony of the red heifers being provided by a Christian group. For the Jews, the red heifers are for the purification of the priests, so they can offer sacrifices in a future temple to prepare for what they believe will be the first coming of the Messiah. But some Christian groups believe that the third temple must be built, so it can be occupied by the man of sin, based on their reading of 2 Thessalonians 2:4. So, by providing the red heifers to the Jews, they seek to speed up end-time events. Ironically, the fulfillment they wish to hasten will be largely destructive to the Jews and the world. Though the Temple Institute represents a radical fringe group in Israeli society, many evangelical Christians support their efforts because they believe the building of a third temple is necessary to fulfill prophecy. Both groups seem to conveniently ignore that their respective views of the end times and coming of the Messiah are diametrically at odds. But does Bible prophecy require a temple to be built as a sign of Christ's return? What does the Bible say about the third temple? Will daily sacrifices be resumed in Jerusalem? After the collapse of Alexander the Great's empire, his kingdom split into 4 smaller empires under his generals, Daniel 8:8. A ruler named Antiochus Epiphanes rose to power in the Seleucid Empire. He ruled over the Jews and outlawed worship of the true God. He stopped the daily sacrifices and offered unclean sacrifices to pagan gods instead, Daniel 8:11-12, 13:11-31. Jesus prophesied that this historical event would also have a future fulfillment. In the end times, a despotic ruler, king of the north, would stop the daily sacrifices again. We know from Daniel that these events will occur at the time of the end, Daniel 12:9, and that from the time that the daily sacrifice is taken away and the abomination of desolation is set up, there shall be 1,290 days, verse 11, indicating a countdown to Jesus Christ's return. If the daily sacrifices are going to be stopped in the future, that means they must first be resumed. This is why the actions of the Temple Institute and their emboldened plans to resume sacrifices are interesting. Must a third temple be rebuilt? After the destruction of Solomon's temple, the Jews were subjected to 70 years of captivity in Babylon, Daniel 9:2, Jeremiah 29:10. Afterward, God began the process of returning them to their homeland to rebuild. Under Ezra's guidance, a group of Jews returned to Jerusalem and resumed sacrifices to God. These sacrifices were performed before work had even begun on the Second Temple, Ezra 3:1-2, 3:4, 5:6. This shows that only an altar is necessary for sacrifices to be offered. A temple is not a requirement. So, why do some believe a temple must be built in Jerusalem in the end times before Jesus Christ returns? Does Ezekiel's temple describe a rebuilt temple in this age? In Ezekiel 40:48, we read about a vision of a future temple. The vision is recorded after the destruction of the first temple and before the construction of the second temple. The second temple was not a fulfillment of this vision because it did not have the physical features described by Ezekiel. So, some connect this with the prophecy of the sacrifices being stopped and conclude that there will be a temple built in Jerusalem before Christ's return. But, as we have seen, the sacrifices don't require a temple. When you study the description of Ezekiel's temple, it becomes clear that this is a structure that will be built after Jesus returns. Here are some reasons. Jerusalem will be known as the Lord is there, Ezekiel 48:35. So this temple will stand at a time when God is ruling in Jerusalem. A river will flow from the temple that will heal the land and the seas, Ezekiel 47:1-8-9. The time setting is after God delivers Israel, Ezekiel 39:25-26, 27-28. God's Spirit will be poured out on all Israel, Ezekiel 39-29. These prophecies clearly describe a temple to be built during the millennial reign of Christ on earth, not a temple built by human beings in this age. Will the man of sin actually occupy a third Jewish temple? Does the prophecy about the man of sin in 2 Thessalonians 2:3-4 require a third temple to be built in Jerusalem? Many do see this scripture as an indication that a temple must be built in Jerusalem before Christ returns. However, though it could possibly be fulfilled by a physical temple, there is another more likely way this scripture could be fulfilled. The New Testament identifies the true Church of God, composed of believers who have God's Holy Spirit, as the spiritual temple of God. 1 Corinthians 3:16, 2 Corinthians 6:16. In 2 Thessalonians 2:4, Paul described things that the man of sin will claim are true, but are actually false. For instance, he claims to sit as God, though he is not God. So, the reference to the temple of God could be another false claim he will make, that the church he leads is the true temple of God. However, the church he will lead will be a counterfeit of the true temple of God, the faithful church Jesus built in the first century. Interestingly, many people have noted that the Roman Catholic Church has historically claimed to be the one true universal church and the kingdom of God on earth. Thank you for watching and stay tuned for next video.